Welcome back to another episode of Hot Mess Espresso, guys. I'm already off to a great start because I'm stumbling over my words. But a few months ago, I put a casting call out for people that are more behind the scenes when it comes to music and things like that. And our next guest is an audio engineer and reached out, and now he's here. So please welcome Chase McKnight to the podcast. Hey, hi, hello.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for reaching out. This is the things I've learned from you are phenomenal. But so you got into audio engineering. How did that kind of start? Has it always been like a passion of yours, or what was the trail to getting to this part of your career?
Yeah, I mean, it started in like high school. I mean,
Hmm.
I was like a band geek. I played trumpet, played guitar, and I just knew that I wanted to do something creative, like musically. I grew up in a really small town, so it was kind of you either were great at sports or you were like nothing at all. So kind of one of those. And I was kind of in the middle of that because I was pretty good at trumpet and like pep band and all that. Like was not as nerdy as it could be. It was pretty fun, but I just knew that that was what I wanted to do. And so, like by my sophomore year of high school, I had already reached out to a school called the Conservatory of Recording Arts and Sciences in Tempe, Arizona, and kind of started that process. And really, by like my junior year, I was like already accepted effectively. So I just had to like wait through my high school to go
Um,
there.
what is that curriculum kind of like when it comes to now? Is it like a college or
A trade school. So
got it? Okay.
just a trade school. At the time, because it has definitely evolved since I was there.
Hmm.
So in 2005, six, a long time ago, it was really geared towards recording. So, and at that point too, like recording studios were a bit different than how they are today. Like today, you and I are speaking on like professional microphones, and doing this where the internet
Right.
couldn't do that at that time. So there's a lot of things that have really evolved. But at the time, it was like if you wanted to have a trajectory of like making albums and having a career in music of some kind, then you needed to do an internship at a studio. You needed to then kind of like work your way up to be like the head engineer, and then hopefully you get lucky and like produce some stuff, and then just kind of takes off from there. So that was like my initial trajectory. I took on an internship in Los Angeles at a place called the Steakhouse Studio in North Hollywood.
Okay.
Um, and I chose that because it had like I'm also a big gearhead, just to throw that out there. So it had like the biggest EMI Neve mixing console in the world.
Ooh.
So anyone listening who is a techie will go, "Oh, okay." It's a $1 million like mixing console and pretty cool. Um, so they accepted me, and from there, kind of just worked up from being like an intern to a runner. So I just got people like coffee and bagels and just anything they needed to then assisting. So like assistant engineer is kind of the you've somewhat made it. Like you're now in the sessions. Someone's like, hey, can you move that mic, or can you like go into Pro Tools, add a new track, do this, or go to the patch bay, change something, take notes. You're constantly taking notes. So because these are like real bands that are in the studio, and so for
Right.
like documentation's sake, if they ever needed to go back in to remix something, they would be looking at the notes and then re-putting the knobs to exactly where they were for
Right.
recall. And that was kind of like my gig for a minute, and then like I was then doing like Pro Tools editing and like chopping up like drum tracks and tuning vocals, tuning stand-up bass, like all that kind of stuff. So
That
that was pretty
that all
fun.
sounds like an absolute blast. I don't think people realize like how much your position is vital to albums and everything else.
It makes you listen to music differently, like,
Hmm.
and and it's not to like diminish like the music itself, but like I definitely it's not just like you have a great artist and you put a microphone in front of it and they play one time and it's like that's the take, and then like it just magically like gets printed onto a CD and gets sold. Like
Yeah, no.
everything gets zoomed in, and like you can change waveforms and you can like edit it like the fuck out of it basically,
Mhm.
and that's what I did, and to like get perfection. Even though you don't want it to sound perfect, you can like get it perfect, and then you can adjust it to sound like more human, and
Right.
like called the quantizing. So there was a lot of that, and like um, short story. Like I remember having at the time when I lived there, I had like six other roommates in a house in LA, all going to different audio. We all came from the same school, and we all started branching off doing different things. And we were watching like the Super Bowl, and I think it was Billy Joel singing the national anthem, and we heard like a note go out of tune, and it was because, but it was like not him. It was they had auto tune on it, and this was like an early version of it too. But they had auto tune
Right.
on it, and it wasn't quantized to the right scale, so it pulled the note to like the next closest note, which was out of key to the song. And we all kind of like looked at each other and we're like, "You heard that, right?" And they're like, "Yeah, we did." And I was like, "Huh." I'm like, "Someone just got reprimanded. Yeah, someone got fired." Um, yeah, it's wild.
Yeah. I was literally about to ask, like, can you kind of like not earball, like, eyeball, but with your ears? That I know earball isn't a word, but I can't think of the other one, the actual word. But yeah, I was about to ask, like, if you can just kind of pick that out, and you're just like, oh, well, that's wrong. They needed to do this, they needed to do that. So yeah, I guess that answers the question.
Yeah, I mean, I have to turn that off, like especially if it's a band that I really love and like I'm there for the music, like I'm in the audience, I'm singing along. Like I
Mm-hmm.
I just missed some of that, but I just went to Hans Zimmer. He came through Vegas
Mm-hmm.
a couple months ago, and like phenomenal concerts, like one of the best I've ever heard.
Right.
And my friend and I are in shittier seats, but like still like okay, we're close enough. And I'm listening, and I'm like, oh, that's a TC Electronics System 6000 reverb. Like I could hear the reverb, like that reverb, and then
Right.
it made me like go home, look it up, find the engineer, friend him on Instagram, look at his gear, and go, oh yeah, okay, I was right. Like it was like that was what it was because it sounded like it, but um, I'm not always right. But like yeah, sometimes you get lucky, and it's like it had that like sonic character, so it's kind of fun.
Sounds like a
Um,
blast.
but yeah, I mean, so I did like recording, and then I have just transitioned to live sound over the last
Mhm.
like 10, 15 years, and it really had to do with like money. To be honest, like
Oh yeah.
studios have kind of started dying off. You don't need to go to a studio for a lot of the things anymore. Like people will still, like if I were going to record a band right now, or even say my own music, I would probably go to a studio to record drums so I can hear like that nice room, have the nice gear for the drums. But then everything else I would probably do at home. The guitars, vocals, uh, any kind of like synths or keys or anything. It'd probably be a lot of it, we'll call it in the box or just like in the computer.
Yeah.
But and that's pretty much the way of the world now. It's not let's just book 2 months at a studio and let's write there, let's get fucked up there, let's sleep there. And like there were a couple bands that did that I just wondered like when are they going home, because I can't go home unless they go home.
You know.
uh and so like there was one band in particular that I was just like how are they, and I'm still young, and I'm like how are they doing this, and the other guy was like, and I'm like, what are you talking about? And then, like he's like Coke, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, oh, whoa. I was pretty naive, like in
Oh
my
yeah.
early days, but yeah, silly me.
I mean, that would track. I would assume that that would be involved if you're like nonstop working on an album for 2 months. But yeah, I've noticed that a lot of artists either have in-home studios now, or there's just like local like space to rent for things. But a lot of artists now, especially like more like on the rock and metal end of things for sure, are producing a lot at home or have learned to produce and now are producing their own. Like it's a lot more independent than with like record owned studio record label owned studios these days. That's definitely what I'm noticing. And I don't know if that jumped a lot because of COVID and people couldn't really like travel and stuff like that. I'm wondering, do you think COVID kind of like exploded that end of having to have your own home studios and learning kind of how to DIY things because people didn't have access to these like bigger studios in LA or New York?
I think 100%. I think that fast tracked so much. I mean, like Zoom became this like household name after everything from the
Mm-hmm.
working from home. So you have like people in all sorts of fields, like healthcare or like anything, going like, oh, I need to do this Zoom thing and be able to communicate to to this and having this be a real mainstream thing. I mean, like podcasting has become this huge, obviously this huge thing, and I
Yeah.
love it. Um, but the gear has just like exponentially increased. I mean, I will admit that like although I'm like a metalhead rocker like emo kid, I love Billie Eilish's first album.
So good.
I fucking love it. I sonically I love it. I love everything about it. And the fact that like her and Phineas pretty much just did that in their bedroom with
Yeah.
like Logic, a microphone similar to ours, and like an interface, and that's it. It's just like, oh yeah, you could go to like to a Guitar Center, buy the gear for like I don't know, $1,500, and then put out I don't know how many times that went like gold or platinum, but it can
Yeah.
fucking do it.
No, it sounded like super professionally done. And then it came out that they did the whole thing in their bedrooms. And I was like, holy shit. Like it doesn't matter where you are. If you know what you're doing, you can throw things together really, really well. That one was mind blowing. And also Billie Eilish, just she rocks. I love her.
Yeah, I mean, you can take as many takes as you need to get the track done. So like, it was cool. I watched like the documentary on that, and you're looking at like their session in Logic, and you're seeing like all the chop points
Mhm.
of them like comping, making a composite track from it all. And it's like it took a lot of takes, but like you play it back and you can't hear it, and that's what it's intended for. I'm like, that would cost like thousands and thousands of dollars if you're in a studio to have like an engineer's time and to do that. So it's really changed the world. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you feel like audio engineering kind of is more of a like less less in demand end of things because of that trend towards self getting it done?
I think there's like different tiers. Like I think that more musicians are getting far more competent in the gear side of things.
Mm-hmm.
Like I am dealing, I'll say the lower level, but I just mean like the not your big names, but like your regional touring bands and maybe a little bit low, a little higher, but they are like building their own like in-ear monitor racks, like so that they can hear themselves on stage. Like they are designing it themselves. Uh, they know kind of what their front of house, like for live sound, what their front of house mix kind of should be, or like the stems they're gonna send to front of house to mix. So they may pre-mix it and send that over, or it's completely independent. Like I'm finding like people are just getting smarter, and ultimately it means that we have to be better too. If they want to
Right.
like pay us to do something, we need to know more than them.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Like that makes complete sense. Like you gotta kind of prove your worth almost in a way where it's like, no, you definitely can't do this yourself because I am the only one that can get XYZ done.
Yeah, I think too. Like the last 10 years is you used to have the big guys like hold their secrets like really close to them, like
Mm-hmm.
the way they track guitars or they mic a drum set and how they EQ something. That's my talent, that's my trick. And now it's like they're more willing to kind of give that out because everyone else is, and it's still like your ears. Like you could have like all the tricks, but you could still not put that together and like make a great sounding record. So I think that people are more. I was having a conversation with a buddy of mine who is a big time like live sound engineer, and uh, we're doing some like ideas of like some video content or spitballing stuff, and I'm like, well, are you worried of showing too much of how your mix is. Like if you were to have a camera like on you the entire time, like do you feel that that's going to like give away your secrets? And he was kind of like, fuck no, who gives a shit? Like
Right.
they're gonna hire me for me, and then like look at like my Rolodex, like my CV, and that's going to keep my career going, not just what I'm doing at this particular time. So it was nice to see like the generational change of being more open and wanting to teach people the real ways of doing things. Because even when I went to school, it was like, here's a generic way of doing this, and here's a somewhat generic way of doing that, and people were still like holding their secrets close to them. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think it's also just yeah, like you were saying, a generational, but also like because I know for me, like my thing is I don't gatekeep when it comes to like starting podcasts for the sheer fact that like I had to learn a lot myself. And I'm like, okay, now I can be the person that I wish I had had when I first started. Because at the end of the day, like I can give you all the material. It's what you do with it,
Yeah.
kind of thing. So, and I'm still learning. I'm still like, over here, like, how do I do XYZ, that kind of thing. But I think it's just more of a people are starting to realize that you can give others the information like how you do it, but it's what they do with it, because some of them are going to be able to copy and even excel what you're doing, and other people are just not going to be able to make it match up, and that's where they're going to still need you.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Totally.
but yeah, so you were saying you do live shows now. What's kind of some of your favorite aspects of doing more live shows versus in studio?
So, to kind of answer that, but segue from like my current role now is I work for like a big audio company.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm basically like, in some ways, I'm like a mechanic for audio,
Mm-hmm.
um, business development, technical marketing, even human resources to a degree for a
Mm-hmm.
fucking big company. But uh, it keeps me like on my toes. And so like if I'm telling a customer how to do something, I want to like this is what I do, not just like this is what a book says you should do. So a little bit of that is to kind of like prove my own worth of like, yeah, I use this stuff just like you do, and so this is a way that does work. Or if that doesn't work, try this or try this or try this. Um, Second, it's just fun. I mean, it's why I got into it, and like it's kind of boring to be like behind a desk and just like answer emails and like tech support stuff. um I take a lot of phone calls, so it'll be fun to see how many I'm missing right now in my do not disturb. But
2030.
there'll probably be five or so, but like
Oh.
it should be fine. But uh so yeah, I in Vegas there's so many venues, and there's so many opportunities to have some kind of like piece of the pie. And I'm fortunate to have like friends that are doing their own things on like a smaller level, that they're like, hey, I can't make this night, would you mind mixing a 5 piece jazz band at this venue? And I'm like, okay, cool, like, do you want me to bring my gear? Or he's like, no, the gear's there, bring whatever you want, but otherwise it should be fine. And do that and like make a few $100, and then just do that a few times like a month, and it's kind of like just fun. So I don't depend on it, like the income of it, but it's just fun. It's fun to be around like live music and trying different things, and like I may just try something different. I read someone's technique on like how to do something. I'm kind of like, well, let's see how that goes. And it's either like, it didn't really work for me, or like, all right, I'm gonna do that from now on. So just trying to always improve. But yeah, that's something that like this year I really want to make a push to do at least like 4 to 8 gigs like a month if I can.
Yeah, that makes sense. Really random question though. Like, obviously, with you being the tech support and like the fix it guy and the one that they call when shit is hitting the fan in real time, what is like the craziest fix it story you have?
Um, the craziest one for me, I think, is I'm sitting with friends. I'm watching the Super Bowl, and I forget what year it was, or I think it may have been like the Seahawks or something, but I believe it was Justin Timberlake was the like halftime, one of the halftime like performances,
Oh, that halftime performance.
and so like I like look at my phone and I see like an engineer's name and like pick up the phone and they're like, hey, yeah, I think you know where we're at right now, and we're kind of having an issue, and do I press this button or this button to do XYZ, and will this fuck anything up if I don't do this, and like setting him up something, and it's like, okay, like this is where like I need like Xanax, like just being able to just like pump it into me, like, but it's those types of like, okay, yeah, and then sure enough, like we figured it out, and a minute later they went on, and without a hitch. So like that was like a good like positive story. I have more positive than negatives, but I do have the negatives too. Like, I think I told you like just on our first like introductory call of,
Mm-hmm.
uh, this is when I was living in LA. Like we opened up a marketing office, and so I was like technical marketing, meaning I would show people stuff, but I didn't sell it. But I wasn't just like only support. I kind of just had a really fun role. But a guy called me, and he was in the Philippines, like an American engineer with some band. I think I know the band, but I won't name it, but like a fairly popular like pop punk band.
Mm-hmm.
And basically he calls and he's like, hey, this isn't working. I have like 2,000 people like in the audience. We're supposed to go on in like 10 minutes, like the changeover, like, but I'm not getting any signal like from stage. So, and this is maybe like 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, like my time. And I'm like, okay. So I'm just like running down like my mental checklist of like, okay, how about this? How about this? How about this? And I wasn't getting any of the answers I needed to be able to make a decision on to do something else. And so finally I'm like, well, dude, you're fucked. So do you have a plan B? Well, I don't really have. I'm like, find a plan B. You have 10 minutes. I don't know what to tell you. See if there's a house desk. See if you can change over your lines. See if you can do at least a line check and just move forward. And like he was like just pissed, not at me, but just at the situation, and
Mm-hmm.
like just heated, hung up, and like I'm like trying to go back to sleep. And a couple hours later, like I woke up like thinking I was like having a heart attack. Like to where I was like, oh, what's happening? Like I've never felt that before. So like I got in my car and I drove to like urgent care and was like, I don't know what's wrong. I feel like I'm like dying. Not to be like hypochondriac, but like I'm like something's wrong.
Yeah, no.
And so like I did a whole like ECG and everything. Like, okay, well, you're fine. You just had like a panic attack. And so like
Oh.
that was like my first time. This is probably like 2016 of like
Mm-hmm.
experiencing a panic attack, because like yeah, like in my position, like you want to save the day. Like that's that's the fun part, is like being the
Yeah.
guy that can fix it. And when you can't, it like it will eat at you. And um so yeah, I guess there's a good story and a bad, and I've had like a mix of those, but like those were I think were more the extremes of like kind of like a fuck this, guy being
Yep.
like upset, and I'm like, dude, I get it. I would be yelling the same thing, but stop. You got to figure it out. Nothing's
Yeah.
happening. You're not solving anything by just like going berserk on me right now. Um, and so I think over time I've been able to handle it a little better, but like those have been the little things that have like, affected my own like mental health like over time. When you compound that, and most of your questions that I get are in a negative sense. It's like, I can't do this. What's wrong? I mean, to where we can kind of make light of it or make jokes out of it. Like when
Mm-hmm.
people say like, I'm doing everything right, but, and I just want to be like, well, if you did everything right, it would be working.
Yeah.
Like, so we kind of have that like insider thing, um, but yeah, like you do feel for the other person, like, because you do gigs and you don't want it to not work. But yeah, fortunately, I mean, the last couple years, like the gear that we have like recently we put out like new products. They've been like pretty rock solid. So I really have to thank like my UK R&D team, to to do that or to help me with that. Like there's been times where like I'm pinging them quite a bit at night. Like there's an 8 hour time difference between Manchester, UK and me in Las Vegas.
Yep.
And I'm like hitting them up super early and like they're like, "What's up, mate? What do you want?" And I'm like, "Mayday, Mayday, SOS." And then like, "Okay, give me 5 minutes, call me back." And then like we try to sort something out. So, and that's essentially like how it is. Like there's myself and a few people like in the US, and like our headquarters is all in the UK. I oversee the Americas, so basically from Canada to Argentina.
Mhm.
Um, so I do a fair amount of travel, like between the continents, like to usually show people how things are, like kind of the cool aspect and a little bit of like the under the hood. Um, so I think that overall our products are just being built more simply. Yeah, like if you know something's going to happen, like you get like the indicators, kind of like a plane. Like over time, a plane will have like more instruments that says like, hey, like your air pressure's low here, or this is happening here, or there's a light here
Yep.
that's red that should be green. And so like those types of things kind of make it easier for us to go, okay, like you just booted up, it's before sound check. Let's figure out why the fuck that's happening before we even move on.
No,
So
1,000%. And actually, as we're doing this, I'm over here like looking at my interface, like making sure that yeah, no, the 48V was never on. So hopefully this works. One thing I've learned about Shure mics is if you're using an interface, the 48V like has to be on, and I always forget to turn it on. So I'm just over here like, did I actually turn it on? No, I didn't. So let's just hope it works. But how you'd mentioned like obviously panic attacks and like your mental health and the guilt and stuff like that. How do you manage that, especially in being kind of in a more like high stress on call environment?
I mean, I would say that I handle it poorly, but over time it's better, but poorly in the sense that like every year I need time off. Like I
Absolutely.
and that dictates like where I travel to where like
Mhm.
now I'm like looking at cruises in the middle of the ocean or camping like on a mountain, no fucking reception, um, like and doing at least like a few days at a time to like cool have my phone have my like my voicemail say call this person call like there's if they call me and they're in a panic, they're not shit out of luck, like there's other people that can more or less assist, but like I need me time
Yeah.
to and as kind of like an introverted person to begin with, like that I can't think of like a term, like it goes down and like I need to like recharge like my battery level
Yeah.
basically. And yeah, like even when like friends that are in the industry are coming through Vegas because they're on tour and like, hey, do you want to like hang out? And I'm like, after like a week of talking to like 80 people and solving like all their problems, and like you're calling me like on a Friday night, I'm kind of like, oh man, like you're my buddy, like I love the band you mix, you're so cool, but I'm like I can't, like I have a hard
Yeah.
time. uh I have a hard time with that. And so sometimes I in my past I've just kind of like ghosted, and that's something that I've needed to like be more professional about. I'm in too high of role to like not get back to people. Um where there's that professionalism that needs to be always in place, but yeah, there's sometimes where like I just want to like put my head in the sand and like fuck off. Um I
Yeah.
used to be like a pothead, and I've recently like kicked that like last year, which has been good. Because I used to be like, if it's past a certain time, like you're not getting the chase that needs to help you, you're gonna get another one that won't or can't. Um,
Yeah.
but um, but yeah, so that's been a struggle. Is the um constant availability, and over 12 years that has compounded to like be my trigger point. That's like when I eventually like throw in the towel, it will be because like I'm looking at my phone and there's like 12 phone calls that I need to return, and they're all high priority, and I don't know what to do. Like that will be the death of me. But
Yeah, no, I can 1,000% understand that. There's been times where I'm like, I'm just gonna go throw my phone in a corner and not post, not look at it, not respond to messages, like, and then I do because I have poor boundaries when it comes to stuff like that. So I totally get where you're coming from, where it's like you feel like you're letting people down if you're not always available. But I just done a podcast episode earlier today that I recorded that was talking about um, people need to have the best of you and not what's left of you. And,
Hmm.
us needing to
Yeah.
take time for ourselves is gonna definitely gonna help be more like present for people for sure. But how's that vacation coming that you definitely need to plan?
It was good. I mean, so I effectively took the week before Thanksgiving till New Year off.
Right.
So I still took in a week 10 calls a week basically of just people that have like my personal cell reached out for something. If it was something beyond me, I would say, hey, contact like HQ and like someone from our actual company can deal with that. But if I knew the answer, I'm not gonna not help him. So like I'll take
Right.
the call. And I have like, there's big bands that are currently on tour with us right now. I mean, like Creed is a big one. Um, so like that was, and Five Finger Death Punch, Pantera. So like a lot of metal. It sounds like
I
by the
love
sounds of
it.
it. But so like those like if I see the name, I'm answering the phone or Corey Taylor's engineer. Okay, cool. Yep. Hi. How's it going? What can I do for you? Like what
Hmm.
time is it? Doesn't matter. Um, and so I have to kind of like partition it into like priorities or like hierarchies, I guess, and of like those are like my guys. Or if it were in the years past, say Metallica or Muse or um, bands that we've heard of, Mariah Carey, even it'd be like, okay, yep, hi, I'm here. What can I do for you? Give me 20 minutes. I'll drive back home and get on my computer and look at log files and see what's wrong with your desk, um, or get the log files sent to someone who can look at it. But yeah, that's still something that I'm working on. Um, and actually, like this week is my last week until we have NAM. So like NAM is like one of the biggest pro audio slash audio musical instrument trade shows in the world. Happens in Anaheim, California for a week. So I'll be
Ooh.
there for a week, standing on the booth, answering all the questions, shaking hands, kissing babies, all that fun. And like, when I'm on there, I'm gonna be like happy and like I'll be like my A game. And then the moment it's like, okay, we're closed for the day, I'm gonna be like, okay, like where's the bar? Um,
Yep.
uh, or I'm gonna go to my hotel room, like take a shower, and then figure out dinner and like hang out with like colleagues and or VIPs or whatever and stuff. But yeah, as soon as I come back from that, I'm gonna just do nothing for like 2 days, just to recharge that battery.
You are speaking my introvert language 1,000% because I'm the same way. Like that's why I have to limit myself to recording 2 episodes a day because I hit that third one and I'm like, absolutely not. Because you have to be on this level of like, active listening and, pivoting and this, that, and the third. So like the second I like hit end session for all, I'm just like I'm just in my chair and I can't move for like however long. And then I'm like, all right, I need to go drink some water and, function for a hot second. But it's rough. Like the day after, especially when I've got, a bunch of introductory calls and then episodes, I'm just like, nobody talk to me. Just nobody talk to me because I've literally been yapping all day. I'm done.
Yeah, yeah. No, so it's totally. I'm trying to like look at my notes. Anyway, yeah, like it's. I don't know. I'm looking forward to this year. Like we should have a fun year. A lot of work travel ahead of me. It's like that's pretty much on like 2 weeks home, 2 weeks on the road every month. So like it is fun to um, get to see a lot of parts of the country and like meet a lot of people and um, yeah, even I would say 5 years ago I'd be like, oh, I don't want to go to the flyover states, but you know what, like Nebraska and like Iowa is actually kind of fun. So I've kind of learned to like go, oh yeah, It's just not. I like mountains and
Right.
the coast, but or Pacific Northwest is like my ultimate destination. It's where I'm originally from. I want to go back there at some point,
Right.
um, but yeah, it's cool.
But yeah, so to kind of wrap this up, in the spirit of not gatekeeping, what advice do you have for somebody that might want to get into audio engineering and do what you do? And like, what are some things that like people need to know that they don't realize that they're getting into when it comes to that part of the industry?
I, for me at least, some of the best advice I have were like understand people, because this industry is who you know, not what you know.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm going to assume you know the basics, and if you don't, then you don't even have a chance. Like, and the basics is you could go down to like I'll say like Guitar Center, and you're going to meet people that have like the basics. Like they're going to know like what the 48V on your mic is, or your phantom power. They're going to know how to connect all this stuff. So it's not a knowledge thing, but it's like how to grow your people and your network. And it's not just LinkedIn. Like I can't stand LinkedIn.
I don't even think I
um
have a LinkedIn.
that's such a boomer thing, and like I don't care if people I know hear that, because like I fucking hate it. But it's it's going out to a show and like asking like how did you get started, and just being really a good listener, and putting your ego away, and go like not just wait for them to stop talking so that you can tell them like what you know, because like that's not your role for the most part, or at least like that was my entry into things. And I had a good like I'll say upbringing in terms of being that runner at the studio and being that assistant engineer where you are a bitch. You are getting paid like barely minimum wage, living in LA. Like it just sucks. Like you're living off of like cigarettes and Red Bull. Um,
Yep.
and it was fun. But you got to meet like really cool people. And then like later down on the line, like they were like, hey, that guy was actually pretty cool. Let's see if he wants to like come do something with me. And like that's somewhat happened to me with yeah, I worked for the singer of the band Megadeth. He basically, I was in the studio with Megadeth doing a record in 2006 and 7, and I just like it wasn't like my personality, or it wasn't my chops. It wasn't like I was just this savant engineer. It was like I said like, yeah, I'll go do that. Like not being an ass kisser or anything, but just like, yeah, no problem. Let me do that for you. And then that was just like the right type of personality that they needed to have there. And then they saw that like, oh, okay, you can press record. Oh, you can edit a bit and build a home studio. So like that kind of like set me on my path, and that gave me the confidence like, oh yeah, I can kind of do this for like any level. Um, so just be a good listener. And I mean, and just YouTube the hell out of like anything. If it were, I used to say like no Pro Tools. Pro Tools is like the main like recording software in studio and stuff, but it's a little different now. It was Pro Tools or nothing. And if someone's like, I'm using Ableton, I would immediately like dismiss them.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'm using like Logic. I'd be like, that's cute. That's cool. That's really neat. But like that's not going to help you. But
Right.
those days are over, and they all kind of do the same now. So yeah, be proficient, but just have a good attitude, and just like don't be someone doesn't want to be around.
Right. A lot of it just kind of comes down to don't have an ego.
Absolutely.
Like I feel like even like where I'm at with podcasting and stuff, I'm still learning. I'm still like, networking my ass off. And, I've been doing this for almost 2 years, and it's still like, I still have a ton to learn. I still have a ton to, you're constantly learning in this industry. And I just say like the arts industry because, podcasting and music and all of that, it's all a constantly evolving kind of, you know, thing. Like podcasting, in my opinion, is like the new age of, a type of journalism
Yeah,
at this point. Like instead of, magazine articles and stuff like that, we're doing podcast interviews. So you're not necessarily transcribing things. It's literally like live interviews, which it's a form of journalism. And like, you just have to kind of always be with the times and onto the new thing. And even if something seems like it's not going to last all that long, you need to know it just in case it does take off, kind of thing.
totally. Yeah. Um, no, this is like the next frontier, I think, in
Mm-hmm.
everything. And I I can't stand the major like platforms like the radio and stuff. Like the radio has so many things you can't do or say or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and like we can do whatever we want if it's on YouTube, as long as we're not saying horrific things that are just like really really bad. You can do whatever, and that's I think how it should be. And I don't see this
Yep.
going away.
I don't either,
uh,
especially like doing both podcasting and TikTok. Like there are certain things that I cannot say on TikTok or I will not have an account. And I'm over here like, yeah, we're just gonna say it. And it's nice. There's a little bit of like creative freedom with, podcasting and that kind of thing. But also it just seems like there's a lot of creative freedom in like what you do because things are constantly evolving. You're constantly learning new and simpler ways of doing things.
Well, yeah, and I mean, going back to just like working for this like really big company, uh, because our parent company, if anyone's heard of the brand Behringer, they own Midas, so like there's a whole umbrella of companies there. So if there's any musicians listening, they've probably heard that name. They probably have like a negative take on it, and I don't blame them. But um, where was I leading with that? But like for us, if marketing has changed so much of it used to be like print, oh, okay, you need to have like your stuff in magazines and like let people review it and go do this, and like now we'll get more hits from a guy that just does like an interview with one of our engineers and talks about the console, amongst just talking about like how they're mixing the band, that like if they're shooting at like at front of house, like okay, here's the audience, here's everything, like that is going to gain more traction. That's going to gain more engagement than anything. So I mean, like the landscape of just marketing has changed so much.
Yeah.
Um, and that's kind of where we're trying to sort things out. I think we're still trying to find our voice. There are other companies that do the same thing we do, and I think that they can do a little bit better than we can. Um, but yeah, we're one of the top 5 like console companies in the world, and hopefully we'll make it to 4 and then 3, and and so on. So
Exactly. So what's next for you career wise? Are we pretty good with where we're at? Like this is kind of where you wanted to be, or are you just pushing towards, the next rung on the ladder?
I I think for a long time I was like climbing up that corporate ladder and just like how can I get like that pay increase? How can I get a little bit more responsibility? How can I do this? So like I went from just tech support, sitting in like a, might as well call it like a call center, to
Hmm.
then being like a field support person, to then doing technical marketing and doing the social media for like the brands. So like um back in the day, I created the Instagram account for Midas Consoles. We're probably over 100K now on that. Like, so that was one thing that was kind of cool. Like, I knew that was going to be a thing, so I started making just weird shit. The early stuff too was kind of embarrassing, like how cringe some of the posts were.
Yeah, it
Trying to
happens.
figure it out, but um, yeah, from marketing. But I really like understanding people, and how like, because we're a global company, I would like to kind of move from the Americas into more of a global role of seeing how like new markets. It's only a matter of time before India and Nigeria and countries that are, I'll just say third world, but they're not really, but they will catch up to us. We will be kind of at a different spot as well, but then maybe in 5 years they will be having the gear that I'm talking about right now while we're on to the next. But it's like seeing that evolution there and making sure that like they have help with content in their language and resources and stuff. So let's try to like grow a community there as opposed to just this American / British thing that we currently have. So, I mean, I do like our company. After that, I'll probably start my own thing. I don't know what yet, but I eventually want to like write. There's a couple book ideas I want to do. Like I'm big into reading. I'm big into like U.S. history at the moment. Like I'm going through like a big kick. So I'm like nerding out. That's unfortunately like taking too much of my time that I have to kind of like hit pause and get back into audio. So that month off, I just read like 4 books on like old U.S. presidents and stuff from like the 1800s. So I need to like table that for another vacation. But yeah, video content. I kind of want to do so some of the stuff that I'm looking at of how come that's not out there yet? Like I really want to see this, but no one has done it yet. Why? And I think I want to do that. So that's I had a buddy in town. He mixes Corey Taylor. And so he was just kind of like at the Mandalay Bay and was like, hey, like, do you want to come out and hang out? And I'm like, hell yeah, man. So I met him there and like we just like spitballed some like video ideas and stuff, and he's like on board. So I think that that's stuff that I'll do with my own like money is to like fly out there, shoot some video with him and try to do some stuff like on the side, see if the company likes that. Then maybe I can finance it like through that. Not try to like profit off of it, but just to like just get it out there. Right. And then eventually, yeah, I don't know, just somehow get rich and retire. But I mean, that's the American dream. I don't expect that. Right. But yeah, otherwise, this is a fun career path. At the end of the day, I had to put it, someone put it in perspective for me. And they're like, well, how's your day? And I'm kind of like, woe is me. Took a lot of calls and stuff. And in a fun way, he was like, yeah, man, it must be hard. Like, you know, just answering like people's questions all day. But he made it sound like I'm not building a dam. I'm not like digging a ditch and like, yeah. So I'm like at the big full picture. I'm like, I have a pretty fun job. I need to remember that. And I just need to remember that.
For sure. But Chase, thank you so much for hopping on. Also, cannot wait to see that video content, to be completely honest.
Cool.
So, but yeah, thanks so much for coming on and chatting and giving us a little insight as to, you know, behind the scenes on the stuff, because I don't think anybody really talks about it enough.
Cool. Well, thank you. And yeah, longtime listener. So this is pretty fun for me. And yeah, I love your show.
Thank